3 nights after my daughter sent me to Alaska to heal, I woke up freezing in a dark cabin with no phone signal, no heat, and footprints circling my house in the snow. At first, I told myself it was just the storm. Then I found the life insurance papers hidden in my suitcase. My daughter Vanessa had increased the policy only weeks before the trip. She was the sole beneficiary. And when I tried to leave, I discovered the cabin door had been locked from the outside. That was the moment I realized my daughter hadn't sent me to Alaska to recover from grief. She sent me there to disappear. If you've ever trusted someone who broke your heart, I'd really like to hear your story in the comments. And tell me where you're watching from and what time it is there right now. Sometimes knowing we're not alone helps more than people realize. If this story touches you in any way, don't forget to like and subscribe so we can keep sharing these moments together. 4 years before my daughter tried to leave me frozen to death in Alaska, my life was painfully ordinary. And honestly, I thought I was grateful for that. My name is Melanie Ramirez. I was 67 years old, widowed and living alone in the same Portland house my husband Miguel and I bought in 1983, when avocado green kitchens were still fashionable and interest rates nearly gave us heart attacks. That house held my entire life inside it. Every scratch on the hardwood floors had a memory attached to it. The faded mark near the hallway came from Vanessa roller skating indoors when she was 8. The tiny burn on the kitchen counter came from Miguel trying to flambe shrimp after drinking too much sangria on our anniversary. Sometimes I would stand in the middle of the living room early in the morning with my coffee and listen to the silence. Not because I enjoyed silence, but because after 42 years of marriage, silence becomes its own kind of ghost. Miguel had died from pancreatic cancer at 71. Fast, cruelly fast. One Christmas, he was hanging lights on the gutters laughing because he always put them up crooked. By Easter, I was helping a hospice nurse adjust his morphine. People talk about grief like it's dramatic. For me, it wasn't. It was quieter than that. Grief was reaching for Miguel in bed at 2 a.m. before remembering there was nobody there. Grief was cooking too much rice because my hands still remembered feeding 2 people. Grief was hearing a joke at church and turning to laugh with someone who no longer existed. After he died, I tried to stay useful. I think women my age understand that feeling. We were raised to believe usefulness protected us from loneliness, so I volunteered at the church library twice a week. I read books to children at the elementary school where I'd once been principal. I kept a vegetable garden alive in the backyard, even though I produced enough tomatoes to feed half the state of Oregon. And every Sunday, my daughter Vanessa came over for dinner. At least she used to. Vanessa was 39, beautiful, smart, charismatic when she wanted to be. As a child, she had the kind of smile that made teachers forgive unfinished homework. When she was little, she used to crawl into my lap and play with my earrings while telling me stories about school. Mommy, she once whispered when she was 6, "If you ever get old, I'll take care of you forever." I remembered that sentence for years, especially later, especially in Alaska. At first, after Miguel died, Vanessa became incredibly attentive. She called almost every day. She brought groceries without asking. She sat beside me during the first holidays when I couldn't stop crying. I thought losing her father had softened her. Maybe it did. Or maybe it simply made her notice what I was worth. The first strange conversation happened about 8 months after the funeral. We were sitting in my kitchen eating chicken soup when Vanessa casually asked Mom, "Have you ever thought about downsizing?" I laughed softly. "Why would I? This house is huge for one person. It's home." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Well, homes like this are worth a fortune now. Portland prices are crazy." At the time, I thought nothing of it. People talk about money, real estate, retirement, normal things. But after that, the questions kept coming. Did I have a will updated? Who handled my investments after Miguel passed? Had I reviewed my life insurance recently? Did I really need such a large savings account sitting untouched? The questions always sounded practical, responsible, and every time I felt uncomfortable, Vanessa somehow made me feel guilty for feeling uncomfortable. Mom, I'm just trying to help. You know I worry about you. What if something happened unexpectedly? That phrase stayed with me. Something unexpected. I didn't realize then how carefully she chose her words. One rainy afternoon, about a year before Alaska, Vanessa came over looking exhausted. Her mascara was smudged, and she dropped onto my couch dramatically. Derek and I are under so much stress, she sighed. Derek Collins, my son-in-law, worked in commercial real estate development. Expensive suits, expensive watches, expensive opinions. Miguel never trusted him. Too polished, he once muttered after Vanessa introduced us. Men who smile that much are hiding sharp teeth. At the time, I told Miguel he was being unfair. Later, I wished I'd listened harder. That afternoon, Vanessa rubbed her temples while I made tea. The market's unstable, she said. Deals keep falling apart. I'm sorry, honey. She looked around my kitchen slowly. You're lucky, Mom. No debt. No pressure. Dad made sure you were protected. Something about the way she said protected made my stomach tighten. Not enough to alarm me, just enough to notice. Then there was the afternoon she asked me to sign paperwork. It's nothing serious, she said quickly. Just emergency authorization stuff, in case you ever get sick. I remember standing at the counter reading through pages filled with tiny legal print while Vanessa talked rapidly beside me. You know how complicated hospitals can be. You trust me, right? I'm your daughter. I signed 2 pages before stopping. What exactly is this one? Oh, just insurance updates. She reached for the paper a little too quickly. That was the first moment I truly felt something cold pass through me. Not fear, not yet, just instinct. A small voice whispering that something underneath the surface had shifted. I started noticing other things after that. Vanessa became impatient when I spent money on myself. She frowned when I donated to charities. Once when I mentioned leaving part of my estate to the church literacy program, her entire expression changed for half a second. It vanished quickly. But I saw it. The anger. One Sunday, I overheard her whispering sharply to Derek in the backyard. "We can't wait forever," she hissed. The moment they realized I was near the sliding door, they both smiled too fast. That night after they left, I sat alone at my dining room table, staring at Miguel's old photograph. "I think something's wrong with our little girl," I whispered. And for the first time since my husband died, I felt truly afraid inside my own home. But even then, even with all the warning signs, I never imagined my daughter wanted me dead. Not until she offered me the trip to Alaska. The trip to Alaska was presented to me like an act of love. That was what made it so easy to accept. About 3 weeks after I overheard Vanessa and Derek arguing in the backyard, my daughter arrived at my house carrying 2 coffees and wearing the bright smile she used whenever she wanted something. "Mom," she said as soon as she walked in, "I have a surprise for you." I remember forcing myself to relax. Part of me hated that I had started becoming suspicious of my own child. I didn't want to be one of those bitter older women who saw manipulation in every gesture. So I smiled back. "Well," I said lightly, "that depends on whether your surprise involves me falling out of an airplane." Vanessa laughed a little too loudly. "No skydiving. I promise." She sat beside me at the kitchen table and slid a glossy travel brochure across the wood surface. Snow-covered mountains stretched beneath glowing green northern lights. Alaska Winter Retreat. "Vanessa." I blinked. "What is this, a vacation for you?" I stared at her. She reached for my hand. "Mom, you've spent 4 years grieving. You never do anything for yourself anymore. You stay home all the time, you barely travel, and honestly," her voice softened, "I think Dad would have wanted you to live a little." That sentence hit me hard, because she knew exactly how to use her father against me. For a moment, emotion closed my throat. I looked down at the brochure again. The cabin in the photos looked beautiful, isolated beside a frozen lake surrounded by pine trees dusted in white snow. Peaceful. Quiet. The kind of place grieving people imagined might heal them. "You really did this for me?" I asked. "Of course I did." She squeezed my hand warmly. "You took care of everyone your entire life." Let somebody take care of you for once. I nearly cried. That's the terrible thing about betrayal. It often arrives wearing the face of kindness. Over the next hour, Vanessa explained everything. Flights booked, transportation arranged, a private cabin reserved for 2 weeks near a small Alaskan town. It's supposed to be very exclusive, she said proudly. Digital detox, nature therapy, total peace. That phrase again, total peace. I should have noticed how carefully she described isolation. Instead, I let myself feel loved. That evening after Vanessa left, I called my best friend Carol from church. She bought me a vacation, I said, still stunned. Carol laughed. Well, it's about time your daughter spoiled you. I know, I whispered. And I truly wanted to believe that. Over the next few days, Vanessa became strangely controlling about the preparations. You don't need to bring too much paperwork, she told me while helping pack my suitcase. I wasn't planning to. I mean, financial stuff. Bank documents, insurance papers, leave all that home. I frowned slightly. Why would I bring insurance papers to Alaska? She laughed quickly. I don't know, Mom. You keep important papers in weird places. Then she changed the subject immediately. Later that same afternoon, Derek arrived carrying expensive winter gear, brand new boots, thermal gloves, a heavy designer coat. You'll freeze to death up there without this stuff, he joked. There was something unsettling about the way he said freeze to death. Maybe I'm rewriting memories now. Maybe trauma makes ordinary sentences sound sinister afterward. But I remember feeling uneasy. Derek insisted on checking my medications personally. You don't want to forget anything important. He lined up my pill bottles on the kitchen counter, carefully studying them longer than necessary. At one point, I walked back into the room unexpectedly and found him photographing the labels with his phone. Oh, he said quickly. Vanessa wanted a backup list. I nodded slowly. Again, something inside me tightened. Still, I ignored it. Because mothers are experts at ignoring things that hurt. 3 nights before my departure, Vanessa invited me to dinner at their house. The evening should have felt warm. Candlelight flickered across the dining table. Soft jazz played from hidden speakers. Vanessa even cooked my favorite garlic butter salmon. But tension sat underneath everything. Derek barely touched his food. Vanessa drank wine faster than usual. At one point, I excused myself to use the bathroom upstairs. As I passed their bedroom on the way back, I heard whispering through the partially closed door. We can't mess this up, Derek hissed. I know that, Vanessa snapped quietly. You said she signed everything. She did. And the policy. A pause. Then Vanessa answered softly, It's done. I froze in the hallway. My heart began beating hard enough to hurt. For one terrible second, I considered opening the door. Instead, I stepped backward silently. Then I deliberately made noise on the stairs before returning to the dining room. Vanessa looked up too quickly when I entered. You okay, Mom? Yes, I lied. I barely slept that night. I sat in bed staring at Miguel's side of the mattress until dawn, trying to convince myself I was imagining things. Insurance. Signed everything. It could mean anything. Anything. The next morning, Vanessa called, sounding cheerful again. Don't forget your passport, Vanessa, I asked carefully. Is everything okay financially? Silence. Just for a second. Then she laughed. Why would you ask that? I don't know. You seem stressed lately. We're fine, Mom. Derek's just dealing with work pressure. Another pause. Then her voice softened. You trust me, don't you? That question settled heavily in my chest. Because trust should never need to be demanded. Still, I answered the way mothers often do. Yes. The morning of my flight arrived gray and rainy. Vanessa drove me to the airport herself. She hugged me tightly outside the terminal, almost dramatically tight. I love you, she whispered. I hugged her back. I love you too, sweetheart. When I pulled away, I noticed tears in her eyes. Real tears. That confused me more than anything else. If she was lying to me, why did she look guilty? At security, I turned back one last time. Vanessa stood near the windows beside Derek. He had one hand resting on her shoulder. Neither of them waved. They just watched me. Their expressions were strangely blank, cold, like people waiting for something inevitable to happen. I remember sitting on the plane afterward with my stomach twisting uneasily. Outside the window, rain streaked across the glass while Portland disappeared beneath the clouds. A flight attendant smiled at me kindly. Vacation? I forced a smile. Yes, but deep down, for reasons I couldn't fully explain yet, it no longer felt like one. And somewhere over the frozen mountains of Alaska, I began to understand that my daughter hadn't sent me away to heal. She had sent me away alone. I had never seen snow look dangerous before Alaska. Beautiful, yes. Lonely, certainly. But not dangerous. That changed the moment I arrived. The plane landed in Anchorage just after sunset, though the sky still carried a strange blue-gray glow that made time feel unreal. Everything outside the airport windows looked frozen solid roads, rooftops, entire fields swallowed by snow so white it almost hurt my eyes. The cold hit me the second I stepped outside. Not ordinary winter cold. This was something alive. It clawed into my lungs with every breath. I pulled my new coat tighter around myself and scanned the pickup area for the shuttle Vanessa had arranged. A tall man wearing a faded brown parka stood near an old black SUV, holding a cardboard sign with my name written in thick marker. M. Ramirez. That's me, I said carefully. The man nodded once. Earl Dawson. His voice sounded rough like gravel scraping metal. No smile, no handshake, just those two words. He grabbed my suitcase without another sentence and loaded it into the back of the SUV. The ride out of Anchorage felt endless. At first there were lights, small businesses, gas stations, a few restaurants glowing warmly against the snow. Then gradually everything disappeared. No houses, no traffic, nothing but endless pine trees and dark mountains looming against the sky. I glanced at Earl while he drove. He looked to be in his late 60s, maybe older. Weathered skin, gray beard, heavy hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. Not once did he attempt conversation. After nearly an hour, I finally spoke. So, do many people stay at this retreat? He kept his eyes on the road. Sometimes. That cabin in the brochure looked beautiful. Silence. Then finally pictures usually do. Something about the answer unsettled me. I looked back out the window. Snow whipped across the road in pale ribbons while darkness thickened around us. How far are we from town? I asked. About 45 minutes now. I blinked. 45 minutes. No traffic in winter. The knot in my stomach tightened harder. Vanessa had described the retreat as secluded, not isolated. There's a difference. A very important difference. Eventually, the SUV turned onto a narrow, unpaved road surrounded by thick forest. Snow crunched beneath the tires while branches bent heavily overhead. Then I saw the cabin. It sat beside a frozen lake like something abandoned by time itself. The structure was large but old, with dark wooden walls and a steep roof buried beneath snow. One porch light glowed weakly against the storm clouds gathering above. No neighboring cabins, no nearby roads, nothing. Just white emptiness stretching forever. Earl killed the engine. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then he spoke quietly. Storm coming tomorrow night. I forced a small smile. Well, at least I brought warm clothes. He looked at me then, really looked at me for the first time, and something in his expression made my chest tighten. Not pity, not friendliness, guilt. The feeling vanished almost instantly. But I saw it. Inside the cabin was strangely beautiful. Large stone fireplace, thick wool blankets, rustic wooden furniture, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the frozen lake. Someone had even left fresh flowers on the dining table. It should have felt cozy. Instead, it felt staged, like a photograph pretending to be a home. Earl carried my suitcase upstairs to the bedroom. The generator's automatic if power goes out, he muttered. Satellite phone's in the kitchen drawer. Oh, good, I said. Cell service seems weak, mostly non-existent. I stared at him. No service at all. Sometimes by the lake. A pause. Mostly not. That was the first moment true fear brushed against me. Not panic, just awareness. A woman my age alone in an isolated cabin with no communication suddenly sounded less like relaxation and more like vulnerability. Still, I tried to calm myself. You're being paranoid, Melanie. Vanessa wouldn't hurt you. That thought still came naturally back then, before Alaska changed everything. Earl headed toward the door. Wait, I called after him. When will you be back? Depends on weather. What does that mean? Another pause. Could be tomorrow. Could be longer. Then he left. I stood at the front window watching his SUV disappear into the falling snow until the darkness swallowed it completely. And for the first time in my life, I felt truly alone. That night I tried calling Vanessa. The call failed 3 times before finally connecting with crackling static. Mom, her voice sounded distant. I made it. Oh, good, she replied quickly. Isn't it beautiful? I glanced around the empty cabin. It's remote. She laughed lightly. That's the point. Disconnect for a while. There's almost no phone signal. You worry too much. The line crackled again. Mom, Derek, and I are heading into dinner. Try to enjoy yourself, okay? Before I could answer, the call disconnected. I stared at the dead phone screen longer than I should have. Then I noticed something else. No Wi-Fi signal either. I checked the modem twice. Nothing. Suddenly the silence inside the cabin felt heavier. Too heavy. I made tea and sat near the fireplace trying to relax while snow drifted outside the massive windows. The frozen lake reflected moonlight faintly beneath the clouds. Beautiful. Empty. Dead quiet. Then I noticed movement. At first I thought it was an animal near the trees, but no. A figure. Someone standing at the edge of the lake, watching the cabin. My breath caught sharply. I stood slowly from the chair. The figure didn't move. I couldn't make out details through the darkness and falling snow, only the outline of someone tall wearing a heavy coat. Then suddenly they turned and disappeared into the trees. I barely slept that night. Every sound made me jump. The groaning wood, the rattling windows, the wind scraping snow across the roof. At around 3 a.m, I finally drifted into shallow sleep near the fireplace. When I woke again after sunrise, pale light filled the cabin. For one brief moment I convinced myself I'd imagined the figure entirely, until I opened the front door. Fresh footprints circled the cabin. Large boot prints. One complete path around the house. Not animal tracks. Human. I stared at them while cold air burned my lungs. Someone had walked around the cabin during the night. Slowly. Carefully. Like they were checking every window. And suddenly Earl's words echoed inside my mind. Storms here make people disappear sometimes. That was the moment Alaska stopped feeling like a vacation and started feeling like a trap. I spent the next morning trying to convince myself I was overreacting. That's the thing about fear at my age, you don't trust it immediately. You question yourself first. Maybe the footprints belonged to Earl. Maybe the figure near the lake had been a hunter. Maybe isolation was making me paranoid. I repeated those explanations while making coffee in the cabin kitchen, though my hands shook badly enough that I spilled grounds across the counter twice. Outside snow continued falling in slow, heavy sheets. The sky looked bruised gray pressing low over the frozen lake. Beautiful. And somehow deeply threatening. I checked my phone again. No signal. Not even one bar. The satellite phone Earl mentioned sat inside the kitchen drawer exactly where he said it would be. Old-fashioned. Heavy. Scratched along the sides. I pressed the power button. Nothing happened. I frowned and tried again. Still dead. At first I assumed the battery needed charging. I searched the drawer for a cord but found none. Then I noticed something strange. The battery compartment was empty. The battery had been removed completely. Cold spread slowly through my chest. Why would someone remove the battery from the only emergency phone in an isolated cabin? I stood there staring at the useless device for a long time. Then I called Vanessa again. Miraculously, the call connected after nearly 5 attempts. "Mom!" she answered breathlessly. "Vanessa, the satellite phone here doesn't work." A pause. "Well, maybe you're using it wrong." "I'm not using it wrong. The battery is missing." Another silence. Then she laughed softly. "I'm sure Earl will fix it when he comes back." "When exactly is he coming back? I don't know, Mom." "You sound anxious again." "Anxious again. Not scared, not concerned. Anxious. The kind of word people use when they want your instincts to sound irrational." "There were footprints around the cabin last night," I said quietly. This time the silence lasted longer. Then Vanessa sighed. "It's Alaska. People walk outside in Alaska." Something about her tone chilled me more than the weather outside. Not because she sounded frightened for me, because she sounded irritated, as though I was becoming inconvenient. "I just thought maybe I should move somewhere closer to town," I said carefully. "No," she answered too quickly. The sharpness in her voice startled both of us. Then immediately, she softened again. "I mean, Mom, you just got there. You can't panic every time something feels unfamiliar." I swallowed hard. "Right. You need rest. That's why I sent you there." "Sent you there?" Again, the wording bothered me. Not took you there. Not booked a vacation for you. Sent. As though I'd been delivered somewhere. The call disconnected a minute later. This time Vanessa didn't try calling back. That afternoon, the heating system failed. One moment, warm air drifted softly through the vents. The next, silence. I checked the thermostat twice before realizing the cabin temperature was dropping fast. Within an hour, cold seeped into every room. I layered sweaters beneath my coat and searched for firewood outside near the side shed Earl had shown me the previous night. The wind hit me violently the second I stepped outdoors. Snow stung my face while ice crunched beneath my boots. I reached the shed and yanked the door open. Empty, no firewood. Nothing. I stared at the barren floor in disbelief. Earl specifically told me extra wood was stored there. So where was it? Suddenly a terrifying possibility entered my mind. What if none of these things were accidents? The dead satellite phone, the missing wood, the isolation, the footprints. I hurried back toward the cabin, my breathing shallow and uneven. Halfway across the icy path, my right foot slipped. Pain exploded through my knee as I crashed sideways into the snow. For one horrifying second, momentum dragged me toward the edge of the frozen lake. I managed to grab a buried wooden post beneath the snow just before sliding farther. My heart pounded violently. If I'd fallen another few feet, I looked toward the lake. Thin cracks spread beneath parts of the ice near the shoreline. The realization hit me instantly. If someone my age fell through that water alone in this weather, nobody would arrive in time. Nobody. I pulled myself upright painfully and limped back into the cabin, shaking so hard I could barely close the door. That was when I noticed something else. My medication organizer sat open on the kitchen counter. I froze. I knew exactly how I'd left it earlier that morning, clothes zipped inside my tote bag. Slowly I walked closer. My heart medication bottle was missing. At first, panic overwhelmed logic. I searched every room frantically. The bedroom, the bathroom, my suitcase. Nothing. Gone. I pressed both hands against the counter, trying to breathe. No, 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 no. Someone had been inside the cabin. Or worse, someone inside the cabin had taken it intentionally. I suddenly remembered Derek photographing my medications before the trip. The room tilted slightly. I grabbed my phone again and tried Vanessa repeatedly until the call finally connected. "Mom." "What now?" she asked, exhaustion thick in her voice. "My medication is gone." "What?" "My heart pills. They were here this morning." "Well, maybe you misplaced them. I did not misplace them. You've been under stress lately." There it was again, that subtle suggestion. Confusion, anxiety, age, as though I couldn't trust my own mind. "I want to come home," I whispered. Silence. Then slowly, carefully, Vanessa said, "Mom, you're not thinking clearly right now." Something broke inside me when she said that, because it wasn't concern. It sounded rehearsed. "I know what's happening around me," I snapped. "Then calm down and stop imagining things." The line went dead. She hung up on me. I stared at the phone in disbelief. Outside, the storm intensified. Wind slammed snow against the windows hard enough to rattle the glass. Darkness came early that evening. Too early. By 6 o'clock, the world outside the cabin had vanished into white chaos. I locked every door manually and dragged a dining chair beneath the front doorknob. Then I sat beside the fireplace, wrapped in blankets, gripping a kitchen knife I'd taken from the drawer. I kept telling myself this was ridiculous, that I was behaving like a frightened child, until I heard footsteps on the porch. Slow, heavy. Crunch, crunch, crunch. My entire body froze. The footsteps stopped directly outside the front door. Then silence. A horrible, endless silence. I held my breath so long my chest hurt. Finally, after nearly a minute, something scraped slowly across the door. Not knocking, not trying to enter, just dragging lightly against the wood. Like someone wanted me to know they were there. Tears filled my eyes before I even realized I was crying. Not because I thought I might die, but because deep down for the first time I truly believed my daughter knew exactly what was happening to me, and she had sent me there anyway. The scratching on the door stopped, but my body didn't. I stayed frozen in the chair beside the fireplace, gripping the kitchen knife so tightly my fingers went numb. The fire behind me crackled softly, almost too peacefully, as if it belonged to another world entirely. Outside, the wind screamed across the lake. Inside, I listened for breathing. Minutes passed. Maybe 5. Maybe 20. Time stopped meaning anything. Finally, I forced myself to move. Slowly, I stood up, every muscle in my body protesting. I approached the front door with careful, silent steps. The chair was still wedged under the handle. My hand hovered near it for several seconds before I even dared to touch the wood. "Hello," I called softly. Nothing. Only wind. I swallowed hard and pressed my ear against the door. At first I heard nothing. Then faint crunching. Footsteps moving away from the cabin. Slow. Deliberate. Not random. Not lost. Someone had come here for a reason, and they were leaving now because they were done watching me. That thought made my stomach drop. I waited another full 10 minutes before removing the chair. My hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped it twice. I locked the door again, then checked every window in the cabin one by one. All of them were shut. All of them still locked. But that didn't comfort me, because I knew now locks didn't matter if someone already had access. I barely slept that night again. Every creak of the wood, every shift of the wind made me sit upright in bed, heart racing. I kept the kitchen knife under my pillow like it was some kind of protection. It wasn't. Morning arrived gray and weak. The storm had not stopped. It had only changed direction, pressing heavier against the world, like it was trying to erase it. I checked my phone again. Still nothing. No signal. No connection. Just a blank screen reflecting my tired face back at me. I told myself I had to get out. But I didn't know how. The roads were likely buried. Earl hadn't returned, and I had no idea how far I was from any real town. For the first time, I understood something terrifying. I wasn't just isolated. I was unreachable. Around mid-morning, I heard a knock. Not the slow scraping from the night before. This was different. 3 sharp knocks. Confident, controlled. I froze instantly. Melanie Ramirez, a voice called from outside. A man's voice. I hesitated. "Who are you?" I called back. "My name is Luke Mercer. I'm a bush pilot. I was told someone might need help out here." "Pilot. The word hit me like oxygen, but I didn't open the door. Not yet. Who told you? I asked cautiously. A local contact. Earl Dawson. My stomach tightened immediately at the mention of his name. Earl had sent him, or was this another part of whatever was happening? I don't trust anyone right now, I said honestly. A pause. Then the man spoke again, softer this time. You shouldn't. That answer surprised me. Silence stretched between us. Finally, I spoke again. I saw someone outside last night. Another pause. Inside the tree line, my breath caught. Yes. There was a long exhale on the other side of the door. Then you're lucky I came when I did. Something in his tone made me hesitate. Not fear. Clarity. Slowly, I removed the chair and unlocked the door. But I didn't open it fully. Just enough to see him. He was tall, probably early 40s, with weather-beaten skin and tired eyes that looked like they had seen too many storms, both kinds. He didn't smile, which I appreciated immediately. I'm Luke, he said again gently. I fly supply routes between small towns up here. How did you find me? I asked. I've been looking for this cabin since last night. My grip tightened on the doorframe. Why? His eyes flicked briefly to the frozen lake behind me. Because this place has a history. My heart sank. What kind of history? He hesitated. That depends on what you already know. That was when I told him everything. Not all at once. Fragments first. The insurance papers. The missing medication. The footprints. The phone calls. The cold tone in Vanessa's voice. The way Derek had looked at my prescriptions. Luke listened without interrupting. When I finished, he didn't speak immediately. Instead, he looked down at the snow-covered ground as if organizing something in his mind. Then finally he said, You're not the first older guest sent here alone. My blood turned cold. What does that mean? He exhaled slowly. About a year ago, another woman stayed in this exact cabin. Same arrangement, same type of retreat. She never came back. My knees nearly gave out. Maybe she got lost. She was healthy, he interrupted gently. Experienced hiker. They never found a body. Only her belongings. The world felt suddenly too small. Why are you telling me this? I whispered. Luke looked directly at me. Because I don't think it was an accident. I stepped back slightly. No, I said. No, my daughter wouldn't. My voice broke before I could finish. Luke didn't push. He just said quietly, I've seen financial motives do terrible things to families up here. That sentence hung in the air between us like ice. He continued, I checked the records for this cabin after Earl mentioned your name. The booking came through a private service, paid in full. No return transport scheduled. My mouth went dry. That doesn't mean it does if you combine it with life insurance changes, he said gently. I froze. How do you know about that? I checked what I could, he said. I wasn't trying to scare you. I was trying to understand why a woman like you would be left in a place like this with no exit plan. Exit plan. That phrase hit me harder than anything else, because I suddenly realized there wasn't one. I felt my legs weaken, and I leaned against the doorframe. Luke took a careful step closer but didn't touch me. I can get you out of here, he said. But we have to move before the storm gets worse. Where would I go? I asked weakly. To Anchorage. From there I can get you to someone who investigates things like this. Investigates. He nodded once. Detective Hannah Brooks. She's handled financial abuse cases involving families before. The idea sounded unreal. Detectives. Investigations. This was my daughter, my Vanessa. My hand trembled violently. What if I'm wrong? I whispered. Luke's expression softened slightly. Then we confirm it together before anything irreversible happens. That word irreversible cut through me. Because deep down, I already knew. Something irreversible had already been set in motion the moment I stepped onto that plane. I finally opened the door wider. The cold hit both of us instantly. Okay, I said quietly. Luke nodded. Pack only what you need. As I turned back into the cabin, I stopped for a moment and looked around. the fireplace, the empty kitchen, the frozen lake beyond the window. This place had been sold to me as healing, but now it felt like something else entirely. A waiting room. I grabbed my coat and medication pouch, what was left of it, and followed Luke outside into the snow. For the first time since arriving in Alaska, I wasn't alone. But I had no idea yet that what was waiting for me back home was far worse than the cabin. The moment I stepped away from the cabin, it felt like I was leaving behind more than just a building. It felt like I was leaving behind a version of myself that still believed in my daughter. The snow bit at my face as Luke Mercer led me away from the porch, his boots sinking deep into the frozen ground. The wind had grown stronger, whipping across the lake like something alive and angry. "Stay close," Luke said without turning around. I nodded, though my voice wouldn't come out. The cabin shrank behind us, almost immediately swallowed by falling snow and distance. It didn't feel real that I had slept there, eaten there, almost died there. And still, some part of me wanted to turn back. Because turning back meant Vanessa wasn't what my mind was starting to believe. We reached Luke's snow vehicle, an old rugged utility sled, parked half-hidden behind a line of trees. He helped me climb in. My hands were shaking uncontrollably now, not from cold alone, but from everything I was finally allowing myself to think. "Where are we going exactly?" I asked. "Small airstrip," Luke said. "From there we can fly south if the weather holds." "If it holds," I repeated bitterly. He glanced at me briefly. "Nothing holds in Alaska for long." The engine roared to life and we moved across the snow-covered terrain, leaving deep tracks behind us. For a while, neither of us spoke. I kept replaying everything in my mind. The insurance papers, the missing medication, Vanessa's voice on the phone, calm, too calm, Derek's careful hands going through my pills, Earl's silence, and the footprints circling my cabin like a slow, deliberate warning. "Luke," I said quietly after a long stretch of silence, "why would someone do this to their own mother?" He didn't answer immediately. That alone told me more than I wanted to hear. Finally, he said, "Money makes people do things they never thought they were capable of." I looked down at my gloved hands. "I don't have that kind of money," I said. Luke shook his head slightly. "You might not think you do." That confused me. "What does that mean?" He hesitated, then reached into his jacket pocket and handed me a folded piece of paper. "I didn't want to overwhelm you," he said, "but I think you deserve to see this." I unfolded it carefully. It was a financial summary. My name at the top. Then numbers. Too many numbers. Life insurance policies I had never approved. Recent increases in value. Beneficiary changes. My vision blurred slightly as I scanned the document. "Where did you get this?" I whispered. "Insurance broker records," Luke said. "Some of it is public when claims and updates are filed through certain channels." I stopped reading, because there it was. Vanessa Ramirez, primary beneficiary, followed by a date, 2 weeks before I arrived in Alaska. My stomach dropped so sharply I thought I might be sick. "No," I said automatically. "No, she wouldn't do this without me knowing." Luke didn't argue. He just let me sit with it. That silence was worse than any accusation, because silence doesn't lie. It just waits. The sled continued forward, cutting through white emptiness. Eventually I spoke again. "My husband left me that policy," I said quietly. "Miguel set it up years ago." "I know," Luke replied. "Then how did she—" He cut in gently. "Power of attorney. Signatures can be used in ways most people don't realize until it's too late." That word again. Too late. I leaned back in the seat, my chest tightening. Vanessa had never asked me directly for money. She had never stolen from me in obvious ways. Everything she did had been subtle, careful, wrapped in concern, wrapped in love. That realization hurt more than anything else, because it meant I had defended her for years without noticing what I was defending. We arrived at the airstrip just before noon. It was barely a strip at all, just a long cleared patch of snow with a small hangar at the end. A single plane sat waiting, its propeller still. Luke helped me down. "Stay behind me," he said. Inside the hangar, a woman in a heavy jacket looked up immediately as we entered. "Is this her?" she asked. "Yes," Luke replied. The woman stepped closer. I recognized her face instantly. Detective Hannah Brooks. She didn't waste time. "Mrs. Ramirez," she said firmly. Luke filled me in on the basics. "I need you to tell me everything you remember in detail." Something about her tone grounded me. It wasn't emotional. It was focused, controlled. So I told her. Again. This time, I didn't hold anything back. When I finished, Hannah looked down at her notes for a long moment. Then she said something that made my blood go cold. "We've seen similar patterns before." Patterns I echoed. She nodded. Financial exploitation disguised as caregiving decisions. Insurance manipulation. Isolation tactics. Isolation tactics. My hands clenched. "You think my daughter?" "I think," she interrupted carefully, "that your daughter may be involved in something larger than you realize." The words hit like ice water. Not just Vanessa. Something larger. Behind her, Luke shifted uncomfortably. "There's also something else," Hannah added. She slid a photograph across the table. It was the cabin. My cabin. But not empty. In the image taken from a distance, I saw myself standing near the window, watching the lake. My breath caught sharply. "I didn't take this," I whispered. "No," Hannah said. "Someone was watching you." A slow, heavy silence filled the hangar. Luke finally spoke. "That confirms it." "Confirms what?" My voice barely worked. "That you were being monitored," he said. "Not randomly isolated." Hannah closed the folder in front of her. "We're going to bring this in carefully," she said. "No direct confrontation yet. We need documentation and leverage." "Leverage against my daughter," I whispered. The word felt impossible in my mouth. Hannah softened slightly. "Against whoever is behind the financial structure." Behind. That word again. As if Vanessa wasn't the only one holding the knife. That thought terrified me in a different way, because it meant my daughter might not even be the worst part of this. Outside, the wind howled against the hangar walls. Luke stepped closer to me. "You're safe here," he said quietly. But I wasn't sure what safe meant anymore. Because safe implied this was over. And something deep inside me was starting to understand it wasn't over. It had only just begun. I should have felt safe in the airstrip hangar. At least that's what Detective Hannah Brooks kept telling me. "You're off the grid now," she said firmly, closing the file folder in front of her. "No one knows exactly where you are except us." But safety is a strange word when you've already been left to die once. It doesn't erase fear. It just gives it a quieter place to sit. Luke Mercer stayed near the door of the hangar, watching the storm outside. Every few seconds, his eyes would scan the horizon like he expected something or someone to appear out of the white blur of snow. I sat on a metal chair wrapped in a thick emergency blanket, trying to steady my breathing. My hands still wouldn't stop shaking. Hannah pulled up a chair across from me. "Melanie," she said gently, "I need you to focus. This is important." I nodded slowly. "I'm listening." She opened the folder again and slid a few printed documents toward me. "These are transactions linked to your insurance policy. There were multiple changes made over the last 3 months." My eyes scanned the pages. Names, dates, numbers. Then Vanessa Ramirez again. Always Vanessa. My throat tightened. "She said she was helping me organize paperwork," I whispered. Hannah didn't respond immediately. Instead, she said carefully, "There's something else." She placed another document down. "A life insurance acceleration clause." My stomach dropped. "What is this?" I asked. Luke answered from behind me. "It means if certain conditions are met, like medical distress or accidental death, the payout increases significantly." My pulse quickened. "Why would that matter?" Hannah looked at me directly. "Because your policy was modified to include conditions tied to remote travel and environmental exposure." The room went silent. Even the wind outside seemed to pause for a second. I shook my head slowly. No, Vanessa wouldn't understand that kind of legal structure. Luke exhaled. "Someone did. That was the first time I heard him say it so directly. Someone. Not just Vanessa. Not just Derek. Someone else. My voice trembled. Who? Hannah hesitated. That's what we're trying to confirm. A deep heaviness settled in my chest. It was worse than accusation. Worse than betrayal. It was uncertainty. Because uncertainty means the danger is still active. Hannah leaned forward slightly. I need you to tell me everything about Derek Collins, she said. I hesitated. He's my son-in-law. Real estate developer. Always very confident. Too confident, Luke asked quietly. I thought about it. Yes, I admitted. Hannah wrote something down. And Vanessa's behavior before the trip, my mind flashed back instantly. The way she avoided my questions. The sudden kindness. The urgency around paperwork. The insistence I travel alone. I swallowed hard. She was guiding everything I said slowly. But it felt like she was following instructions. Hannah's pen stopped. Following instructions, I nodded. Like she wasn't the one deciding everything. Silence stretched again. Then Hannah closed the folder. That's consistent with coercion patterns, she said quietly. My heart thudded painfully. So what now? I asked. Hannah stood up. Now we verify every financial transfer, every signature, every communication. And we make sure you don't leave this facility alone. Facility. Not refuge. Not shelter. Facility. That word made everything feel more real. Luke stepped forward. I'm flying a supply run in an hour, he said. Weather window is small. If anything happens, Hannah interrupted. Nothing will happen, she said firmly, because we're not giving them the opportunity. But even as she said it, I saw something in her eyes. Concern, not confidence. That night I couldn't sleep. They gave me a small room attached to the hangar office. A bed, a heater, a locked door. Still I kept checking it. Twice, 3 times. I sat by the window watching snow fall endlessly over the runway lights. Everything felt suspended, like the world was holding its breath. Around midnight, Luke knocked gently on my door. Melanie, he said softly. I opened it slightly. What is it? He looked tired. I checked something you might want to see. He handed me his phone. On the screen was a flight log. My flight, from Portland to Anchorage. But something was wrong. There was a last-minute routing adjustment, Luke said. It wasn't standard. What kind of adjustment? He hesitated. The final destination wasn't originally this cabin. I frowned. What do you mean? He pointed to the screen. The original booking had ended at a wellness lodge near Fairbanks, not the remote lake cabin. My breath caught. So someone changed it, yes, Luke said quietly. And that change was approved through a secondary account linked to your insurance broker. My stomach turned cold. That doesn't make sense, I whispered. Luke nodded. It does if someone wanted you somewhere specific. I stared at him. You think I was redirected? He didn't answer immediately. Then he said the words that made my blood freeze. I think you were delivered. Delivered. Like cargo. Like something to be placed exactly where someone wanted it. I stepped back slowly, sitting down on the edge of the bed. No, I whispered again. No, that's not possible. Luke lowered his voice. Melanie, someone planned your isolation carefully. My mind spiraled. Vanessa's voice. Derek's calculations. Earl's silence. The missing phone battery. The footprints circling the cabin. All of it suddenly aligned into something I didn't want to understand. A system. Not random actions. A system built around my absence. I pressed my hands to my face. I raised her, I said brokenly. I raised her alone after Miguel died. Luke didn't interrupt. I taught her everything I knew about kindness. My voice cracked. So how did she learn this silence? Then Luke said quietly, sometimes people don't learn it. They're taught it by someone else. That statement hung in the air like a blade. The next morning, everything changed. Hannah received a call. I could tell immediately from her expression that something had gone wrong. She stepped outside the room while Luke stayed with me. "What is it?" I asked. Luke didn't answer at first. Then he said, "Someone accessed your Portland home." My heart dropped. "What?" "Security footage shows entry last night," he said. I stood up instantly. "My house?" He nodded. "They were looking for something." My breath came faster. "What did they take?" Luke looked at me carefully. "Documents." Then he added softly, "And your husband's old financial records. Miguel's records. Why would anyone want those?" Before I could ask, Hannah returned. Her face was pale. "They know you're alive," she said. The room went silent. Luke straightened immediately. "What do you mean?" Hannah held up a printout. "Someone tracked the insurance activity. They know the policy didn't trigger, which means they know she didn't die in Alaska." My entire body went cold. "So what happens now?" I whispered. Hannah looked at me directly. "Now they adjust their plan." Outside, the wind suddenly howled harder against the hangar walls. And for the first time since arriving in Alaska, I understood something terrifying. My survival had just become a problem they needed to fix. The words Hannah Brooks said they adjust their plan didn't leave my mind. They circled it, again and again, like the footprints around my cabin in Alaska. Only now I understood those footprints were never random. They were monitoring me, measuring me, waiting for something to finish. Luke stayed close after Hannah's warning, but even his presence didn't erase the feeling that I had stepped into something far larger than my own family. That night I barely slept again. Every sound inside the small hangar room felt amplified, the heater clicking on and off, the wind pressing against metal walls, distant aircraft noises echoing like warnings. At some point I stopped pretending I could rest. Instead, I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at Miguel's old silver wedding ring I always wore on a chain around my neck. "What is happening to our family?" I whispered into the dark. No answer came. Only silence. The next morning, Hannah arrived earlier than usual. Her face looked different, tighter, more controlled. That was never a good sign. "We found something," she said, immediately handing me a folder. Luke stood beside her, arms crossed. I opened it slowly. Inside were email threads, financial transfers, insurance coordination logs. My name appeared everywhere, but so did Vanessa's and Derek's. Then something else made my stomach drop. A third party, a financial consultant I had never heard of. R. Caldwell Advisory Services. "What is this?" I asked quietly. Hannah exhaled. "That's what we're trying to understand." Luke leaned forward. "This consultant is the one coordinating adjustments to your insurance structure." My hands tightened on the paper. "So Vanessa didn't do it alone." Hannah shook her head. "Not according to this." She pointed to the screen of her tablet. "Most of the policy modifications were signed off through a legal intermediary." My throat felt dry. "A lawyer." "Not exactly," Hannah said carefully. "More like a financial executor service." Luke stepped closer. "Someone who manages assets quietly," he said, "for clients who don't want direct fingerprints." My stomach twisted. "So Vanessa was working with them," Hannah hesitated. "That's what we believe." I stared at the documents again. It didn't feel real. Vanessa, my daughter, working with outside professionals to adjust my life, my money, my death benefits. But why? That question echoed inside me harder than anything else. Hannah continued. "There's more." She slid another document forward. "A property listing. My house in Portland. My home. Listed." My breath stopped. This is impossible," I whispered. Luke's voice was quiet. "It was put on the market 2 days ago." "No," I said immediately. "I didn't sign anything." Hannah nodded. "We know." My heart began pounding. "So how is it listed?" Hannah looked at me carefully. "That's what happens when someone with legal authority begins restructuring ownership." My knees weakened slightly. "I don't understand," Luke answered softly. "Power of attorney abuse." The words hit like ice water. Vanessa had my signature. Vanessa had access. Vanessa had been inside my financial life for months, years maybe. I sat down slowly. She wouldn't sell my home, I said again, but my voice was weaker now. Hannah didn't argue. She just placed a final sheet of paper in front of me. A text message transcript. Between Vanessa and Derek. Dated the night before I left for Alaska. I read it slowly. Once she's isolated, it will look like accident exposure. Cold weather, no witnesses. My hands began shaking immediately. I kept reading. Insurance payout clears in 30 to 45 days. We settle everything after. The room tilted slightly. Luke stepped forward instinctively. Melanie. But I couldn't hear him. I kept reading. Another message. Don't hesitate. We already changed the policy threshold. If she survives, everything collapses. My daughter's words. Cold. Clinical. Final. And suddenly something inside me broke in a way I couldn't describe. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly, like something inside my chest finally accepting what my mind had been resisting. Hannah closed the folder. We believe Vanessa and her husband were under extreme financial pressure, she said carefully. But this level of coordination, she didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Luke spoke next, and the consultant, Hannah, nodded. That's the missing piece. We think our Caldwell advisory is the structure controlling execution. Execution 1 repeated weekly. Hannah looked at me directly. Financial execution, not necessarily physical. That sentence should have comforted me. It didn't, because I already knew what had happened in Alaska wasn't just paperwork, it was survival. Luke turned to me gently. We need to bring Vanessa in for questioning. My stomach tightened instantly. No, I said quickly. Both of them looked at me. You don't understand, I continued, my voice shaking. She's my daughter. Hannah softened slightly. I do understand. But I shook my head. No, you don't. Silence filled the room, because in that moment I realized something horrifying. Even if they arrested Vanessa, even if they exposed Derek, even if everything collapsed, I would still be left with the same truth. My daughter had tried to erase me. That truth didn't need legal confirmation. It already lived inside me. That afternoon, Luke received a call. He stepped outside to answer it. When he came back, his expression had changed again. Someone broke into the hangar storage area, he said. Hannah immediately stood. When, 20 minutes ago, my stomach dropped. Who, I asked. Luke shook his head. We don't know yet. Hannah grabbed her coat instantly. Lock everything, she ordered. But Luke didn't move. Instead, he looked at me. That's not the worst part. My throat tightened. What is... He hesitated. Your daughter knows you're not in Alaska anymore. The room went silent. What, I whispered. Luke nodded slowly. She's been tracking the insurance endpoint activity. When it didn't complete, she traced the confirmation signal back here. My breath stopped. So she knows I'm alive. Yes. Hannah turned sharply. That escalated too fast. Luke looked at her. There's more. He pulled out his phone and showed us a new message. From an unknown number. But the text was simple and devastating. Bring her home, or we finish the original plan. My blood turned cold. Hannah stared at the message. This is no longer just financial fraud, she said quietly. Luke nodded. This is containment. I looked between them. Containment, I repeated. Hannah closed her eyes briefly. They don't care if you're alive, she said. They care if you stay out of the system they built around you. My legs felt weak again. Luke stepped closer. Melanie, he said gently, you're not just escaping something anymore. I looked at him. What am I doing then? He answered quietly. You're interrupting it. Outside, the wind slammed against the hangar so hard the walls vibrated. And for the first time since Alaska, I understood the most terrifying part of all. Vanessa wasn't trying to kill me anymore. She was trying to bring me back. The message Luke showed me didn't just scare me. It changed the shape of everything I thought I understood. Bring her home, or we finish the original plan. Those words didn't sound like panic. They sounded like instruction. And instruction means structure. Structure means control. And control means this was never just about Alaska. It was about something already in motion long before I ever stepped onto that plane. Hannah Brooks didn't say anything for nearly a full minute. She just stared at the message on Luke's phone like she was trying to decide how many layers of danger were already underneath it. Finally, she spoke. "This is escalation protocol language." Luke frowned. Meaning, Hannah said slowly, "This isn't improvisation anymore. Someone is managing outcomes." My chest tightened. "Managing me," I whispered. Hannah looked at me directly. "Yes." The word landed heavier than anything I had heard since this began. Luke stepped closer. "We need to move you again," he said. "Move me where I asked immediately." Hannah answered. "A secured federal safe location outside the state network." I blinked. "That sounds like a prison." "It's protection," she corrected gently. "But protection is a word that loses meaning after you've already been left alone in a cabin where your phone doesn't work and your medication disappears." Still, I nodded. Because I had no better option. At least that's what I thought. We left the hangar less than an hour later. Snow was lighter now, but the sky had darkened in a way that made the world feel unfinished, like the storm had not ended, only paused to breathe. Luke drove. Hannah sat in the passenger seat. I was in the back. No windows opened, no doors unlocked, and yet I still felt exposed. "Do we know where Vanessa is right now?" I asked quietly. Hannah glanced back. "Portland." My stomach twisted. "And Derek same." I stared out at the frozen landscape passing by. "I don't understand," I whispered. "If they think I'm alive..." "Why stay there?" Luke answered without turning. "Because they think they still have leverage. Leverage over what I asked." He paused. "Over your return." That sentence didn't make sense at first. Then it did. Slowly. Horribly. They didn't just want me gone. They needed me somewhere predictable. Controlled. Contained. Alive if necessary. Dead if convenient. But always usable. My hands curled into fists in my lap. "I raised her," I said quietly. No one responded. "I raised her alone," I repeated stronger this time. "After Miguel died, I did everything for her." Hannah finally spoke softly. "That doesn't protect you from what she's become." The word "become" hurt more than anything else, because it suggested change. Not innocence, not misunderstanding. Change. We drove for nearly 40 minutes in silence. Then Luke's phone rang. He answered quickly. "Yeah." His expression changed instantly. "What?" went a pause. Then his jaw tightened. "I understand." He ended the call and looked at Hannah. "Someone accessed the secondary insurance routing logs." Hannah went still. "That's impossible without clearance." Luke nodded. "That's what I said." My stomach dropped. "Who accessed it?" I asked. Luke looked at me, then said something I wasn't prepared for. "Vanessa's lawyer." The world narrowed instantly. "Her lawyer," I repeated. Hannah straightened sharply. "She has legal counsel involved now." Luke nodded. "And they're requesting confirmation of your status." My throat went dry. "What does that mean?" Hannah answered carefully. "It means they're trying to determine whether you are legally alive or legally absent." The words made no sense emotionally, but legally, they made everything terrifyingly precise. If I was declared missing long enough, if my death could be assumed, everything I owned could be transferred. Everything. My house, my savings, my husband's legacy, even the insurance payout. And suddenly I understood something I had refused to see before. This wasn't just greed. It was timing. Perfect timing. "Stop the car," I said suddenly. Luke glanced at me. "What, stop the car?" Hannah turned. Melanie, stop it, I repeated sharply. Luke pulled over reluctantly onto the side of the snowy road. The engine idled. I leaned forward, breathing heavily. If Vanessa's lawyer is involved, I said slowly, then they already have documentation ready. Hannah didn't respond. That means I continued, they expect a conclusion. Luke's voice was quiet. Yes. My chest tightened. And if I disappear again into a federal safe house, I paused. That confirms their narrative. Silence. Hannah slowly nodded. Yes. That was the moment everything shifted again, because I realized something no one had said out loud. Being protected also meant being removed. And removal is exactly what had already been done to me once. In Alaska. I looked at Luke. You said earlier I was being delivered, I said quietly. He nodded. Yes. What if I'm still being delivered? I asked. Hannah frowned. Delivered where I swallowed hard. Into whatever ending they already planned. The car went completely silent. Even the engine noise felt distant. Luke looked at Hannah. She's right to question containment. Hannah exhaled slowly. This is not a safe situation, she admitted, but neither is leaving her exposed. I felt my heart pounding harder now. I need to understand something I said. Both of them looked at me. Is Vanessa still in control of anything right now? Hannah hesitated. Financially? Possibly, Luke added quietly, but not operationally. That word mattered. Operationally, meaning someone else was steering. I closed my eyes briefly. So there's someone above her. Neither of them disagreed. That silence told me everything. My daughter was not the top of this structure. She was inside it, used by it, or using it in return. I didn't know which answer hurt more. We resumed driving. But now nothing felt stable. Not the road, not the mission, not even my own understanding of reality. After another hour, we arrived at a small secured facility outside a rural town. It looked like a government checkpoint disguised as a warehouse. Hannah turned to me. This is temporary, she said. I nodded slowly, but I didn't believe in temporary anymore. Inside, everything felt sterile. White walls, flickering fluorescent lights, no windows that opened. A room designed for waiting, not living. Luke stood near the door while Hannah spoke to someone outside. I sat alone at a metal table, and for the first time since Alaska, I felt something deeper than fear. I felt clarity, because patterns don't lie. Not when you've lived long enough to recognize them. Vanessa didn't suddenly become dangerous. Derek didn't suddenly become capable of this. Someone had guided them, shaped them, directed the outcome like a quiet hand behind a curtain. And I had walked into it willingly because it wore my daughter's face. The door opened. Hannah returned. Her expression was different now. Tighter, more urgent. We have a problem, she said. My stomach dropped. What kind of problem? She held up a new report. Your house in Portland was accessed again. I stood up instantly. What? Hannah nodded. This time they weren't looking for documents. Luke stepped forward. Then what were they looking for? Hannah looked at me directly. You. My breath stopped. They believe, she continued carefully, that you are still inside that house. A cold realization spread through my body. But I'm not, I whispered. I know, she said. Luke added quietly. But someone is acting like you are. My mind went blank for a moment. Then one horrifying thought surfaced. If someone is pretending I'm there, I said slowly, then they're controlling where attention goes. Hannah nodded once. Yes. Luke finished the thought. And where it doesn't. Silence. Heavy, absolute. Because suddenly I understood the real shape of the trap. Alaska was never the end. It was just the first removal. And now, someone was preparing the second. The words Luke said kept echoing in my mind long after the room went silent. Someone is acting like you are still inside your house. That sentence didn't feel like information. It felt like a replacement, like I had already been written out of my own life, and someone else was rehearsing my absence. Hannah Brooks paced slowly near the metal table, her phone pressed to her ear. Her voice was low-controlled, but I could hear urgency slipping through the cracks. Yes, I understand. No, don't escalate yet. She ended the call and looked at me. We have a developing situation in Portland. My stomach tightened instantly. What happened? I asked. She hesitated. Your neighbors reported seeing movement inside your house. I froze. That's impossible. Luke stepped forward slightly. Security cameras. Hannah nodded. Private system. Motion detection triggered twice in the last hour. My heart began to pound harder. I'm here, I said immediately. I'm not there. I know, Hannah said quickly. But someone is staging your presence. The room felt suddenly smaller, like air itself had tightened around me. Luke looked at me carefully. This isn't just about disappearance anymore, he said quietly. It's about narrative control. I frowned, meaning what Hannah answered instead. Meaning someone is trying to make the world believe a version of events that benefits them. A version of events. Those words sent a chill through me, because I suddenly understood something I hadn't fully grasped before. They weren't just trying to kill me. They were trying to rewrite me, erase me in a way that looked natural, accidental, believable. My hands trembled slightly. Vanessa wouldn't know how to do that, I whispered. Luke didn't respond immediately, and that silence hurt more than words. Hannah finally spoke carefully. Then someone is guiding her. There it was again, that invisible presence behind everything. The consultant. R. Caldwell Advisory. The name that kept surfacing like a shadow under every document. Before I could speak again, Hannah's phone rang. She answered immediately. Yes, a pause. Her expression changed instantly. What do you mean she's requesting contact? Luke straightened. My stomach dropped. Who? I asked. Hannah looked at me. Vanessa. The world tilted slightly. No, I said immediately. She knows I'm alive. Hannah nodded. According to the message, yes. Luke stepped closer. What does she want? Hannah listened again, then lowered the phone. She says she needs to speak to you directly. My throat tightened. No, I said again. Hannah didn't push. Instead, she said softly, It's not a request. It's a condition. My breath caught. A condition for what? For stopping escalation. Silence. Heavy. Luke looked at me carefully. They're threatening to expand this, he said quietly. I felt my stomach twist. Expand what? Hannah answered. The legal declaration process. My chest tightened instantly. They're trying to declare me dead, I whispered. Hannah didn't deny it. That process accelerates if there is no confirmation of your living status within a verified time frame. I shook my head. That's insane. I'm right here. Luke spoke gently. But they don't see you here. That sentence hit deeper than anything else, because it wasn't about truth anymore. It was about visibility, and I was becoming invisible in real time. Hannah made a decision. We let her talk to you, she said. Luke immediately turned. No. Hannah held up a hand. Controlled contact. Monitored. Recorded. My stomach tightened. And if it's a trap? Luke asked. It already is, she replied calmly. We just don't know which side said it. That answer chilled me, because it meant no one was fully trusted anymore, not even Vanessa. A phone was brought in. Simple. Monitored. Recorded. My hands shook as I held it. Hannah gave me strict instructions. No emotional escalation. No revealing location. Keep her talking. I nodded slowly, but my heart was already breaking before I even pressed call. The line rang twice, then she answered. Mom. Her voice hit me instantly. Soft, familiar, almost normal. For a second, just 1 second, I wasn't in Alaska or a secured facility or a collapsing legal nightmare. I was just a mother hearing her daughter's voice. "Vanessa," I whispered. A pause. Then she spoke again. "I need you to come back." My breath caught. "You know I can't," I said carefully. Silence. Then her tone shifted. Not angry, not emotional. Calculated. "You don't understand what's happening," she said. My grip tightened on the phone. "I think I do." Another pause. Then she said something that froze me completely. "They're saying you're missing Mom. Not dead. Missing." I looked up at Hannah immediately. She nodded slightly. Vanessa continued. "And Derek is being questioned. Lawyers are involved. Everything is collapsing." Her voice cracked slightly, but not in grief. In pressure. Like something closing in. "Vanessa," I said quietly. "Why did you send me to Alaska?" Silence. Longer this time. Then she answered. "I didn't." My entire body went still. "What, I didn't send you there alone?" she said quickly. "That wasn't the plan." Hannah leaned forward, instantly listening. Luke's expression tightened. "What plan?" I asked. Vanessa hesitated. Then her voice dropped lower. "Mom, I think someone changed it after I signed the paperwork." My stomach dropped. "Signed what paperwork?" I asked immediately. A pause. Then she whispered, "The travel authorization. The insurance coordination. Derek handled most of it." I felt the ground shift under me again. "Derek," I repeated. "Yes," she said quickly. "He said everything was standard, that it was just a wellness retreat arrangement." My hands began shaking harder. "And you trusted him?" Silence. Then softer, "I thought I was helping you." Something broke inside me at that sentence, because I heard it. Not manipulation, not malice. Confusion, fear. Vanessa wasn't controlling everything. She was inside something she didn't fully understand. Hannah suddenly stepped closer and signaled me silently. "Keep her talking." I swallowed hard. "Vanessa," I said gently, "who is R?" "Caldwell Advisory." A pause. Then her voice changed. Lower, uneasy. I've never heard that name before today. Luke and Hannah exchanged a look instantly. My heart pounded. "Then who is coordinating this?" I asked. Vanessa's voice trembled slightly now. "Derek said the broker handles everything, that we don't need to know details." There it was again. The broker. The structure. The layer above her decisions. I closed my eyes briefly. "Vanessa," I said softly, "I am not safe." A long silence followed. Then she whispered something that shattered what was left of my certainty. "I think neither of us are." Before I could respond, the line suddenly went dead. The phone dropped signal. The room went silent. Hannah immediately turned away, already speaking into her headset. Luke stood very still, and I sat there staring at the blank screen, realizing something terrifying. For the first time since Alaska, I didn't know who was trying to save me, and who was trying to control the outcome of my survival. The silence after Vanessa's call felt heavier than any storm I had ever experienced. It didn't end. It just changed shape. Hannah Brooks immediately left the room, speaking urgently into her headset again, her voice sharp and clipped. Luke Mercer stayed behind with me, but even he seemed different now, less certain, more alert. Like something had shifted under his feet, too. I still held the phone in my hand. The screen was blank. No call history visible anymore, just a dark reflection of my own face staring back at me. I heard something in her voice, I whispered. Luke looked at me. "What did you hear?" I hesitated. "Fear," I said quietly. "But not the kind you fake." He didn't respond right away. That silence told me he understood exactly what I meant. Hannah returned a few minutes later, her expression controlled but tense. "We have confirmation," she said. My stomach tightened. Confirmation of what? She placed a printed message on the table. It was a legal notice. Stamped, filed, official. I looked down slowly, and my breath stopped. Petition for presumption of death. filed in Oregon court. My name was on it. Melanie Ramirez. I felt the world tilt again. "No," I whispered. "I'm here." Hannah nodded. "Yes, but legally they are trying to establish otherwise." Luke stepped closer. "Who filed it?" he asked immediately. Hannah didn't answer right away. Then she said it. "Derek Collins." My chest tightened painfully. Of course. Derek. Always Derek in the structure. Always Derek behind the movement. I pressed a hand to my forehead. "Vanessa said she didn't send me to Alaska," I whispered. Hannah looked at me carefully. "That doesn't remove responsibility," she said gently. "It just changes coordination." Luke frowned. "What do you mean?" Hannah exhaled. "It means she may not have understood the full legal outcome of what she signed." My stomach sank. "So she helped them," I said slowly without knowing what she was building. Hannah didn't deny it. "That's one possibility." Luke stepped back slightly, running a hand through his hair. "So we have a daughter who may be both participant and victim." I looked down at my hands. It sounded impossible. But so did everything else I had lived through in the past week. The footprints in Alaska, the missing medication, the staged isolation, the insurance manipulation, the voice on the phone that sounded like my daughter and yet didn't fully feel like her anymore. "I want to see her," I said suddenly. Hannah looked up immediately. "That's not advisable." "I don't care," I said more firmly. "I need to look at her face and understand what is real." Luke shook his head slightly. "Emotionally, that's dangerous right now." "I'm already in danger," I snapped. Silence. Then Hannah said quietly, "If we arrange contact, it has to be controlled." I nodded. "Then arrange it." The meeting was set for the next day. Not in Portland. Not in Alaska. A neutral federal location halfway between jurisdictions. A secure interview room. No glass barriers. No public access. Just cameras and witnesses. But even knowing that I didn't feel safe, because safety had stopped meaning physical protection, it now meant emotional truth, and I wasn't sure I could survive that either. The next morning, Luke drove me to the facility. The sky outside was pale and empty, like the world had been washed clean of color overnight. I stared out the window the entire way. "Do you think she'll tell the truth?" I asked quietly. Luke didn't answer immediately. Then he said, "I think she believes her version of it." That didn't comfort me. If anything, it made it worse, because belief is harder to break than lies. We arrived at a quiet building with no signage, just concrete steel and silence. Inside, everything was too bright, too clean, like the building had never held anything human before. Hannah met us at the entrance. "She's already here," she said. My stomach dropped. "Alone?" "Yes," she replied. I nodded slowly. "Then let's go." The room was small. A table, 2 chairs, a camera in the corner. That was it. When I stepped inside, I saw her immediately. Vanessa Ramirez, my daughter. She looked thinner than I remembered. Tired. Her hair was pulled back loosely, and her hands were clasped tightly in front of her on the table. But when she saw me, she stood up instantly. "Mom!" Her voice broke. Just like that. Not controlled, not calculated, broken. For a second, I forgot everything. I almost moved toward her. Almost. But Hannah's presence behind me held me in place. I sat down slowly instead. Vanessa sat again, wiping her eyes quickly like she was ashamed of the emotion. "I didn't know," she said immediately. I studied her face carefully. "I need you to explain," I said quietly. She nodded quickly. "I thought it was just financial restructuring," she said. "Derek told me it was a way to stabilize everything after Dad's death impact on taxes and assets." I stayed silent. "He said the retreat was your idea," she continued. "That you needed time away. That everything was handled." My throat tightened. "And you believed him?" Her eyes filled again. "I trusted him," she whispered. "I thought I was helping you, Mom." The room went quiet. Behind me, I could feel Luke shifting slightly. Hannah didn't interrupt. Vanessa continued, voice shaking now. When I saw the insurance changes later, I tried to reverse them. I frowned. You tried? Yes, she said quickly. But by then everything had already been transferred through the advisory structure. My stomach tightened. R. Caldwell, I said quietly. She nodded immediately. That's the name Derek used. Silence. Heavy. Real. Then she looked at me more directly. But I swear to you, I didn't know you would be isolated like that. I searched her face, trying to find manipulation, trying to find control. But what I saw instead was confusion, and something worse. Regret. Hannah finally spoke. Vanessa. Do you understand what your actions enabled? Vanessa flinched slightly. I understand now, she whispered. I leaned forward slightly. No, I said quietly. I don't think you do. She looked at me. Tears were falling now unchecked. I almost lost you, she whispered. I felt something inside me crack again. But not fully break. Not yet. Because pain alone doesn't equal innocence. I had learned that in Alaska. I looked at her for a long time. Then I said softly, You didn't almost lose me, Vanessa. She froze. I was already gone before you realized it. Silence filled the room. No one moved. No one spoke. And in that silence, I finally understood the hardest truth of all. This wasn't a story about a daughter who tried to kill her mother. It was a story about a daughter who handed control to someone who knew exactly how to use her. And I was the consequence. Not the target. The consequence. I didn't sleep the night after seeing Vanessa. Even though I was back in a secure federal facility, even though Hannah Brooks assured me there were guards and protocols and containment measures, my mind refused to accept that I was safe. Because safety is not a room. It's not a locked door. It's not even armed protection. Safety is trust. And I had none left. Vanessa's face kept replaying in my mind. The way she said, I didn't know. The way she cried, not dramatically, not performed, but broken in a way that didn't feel rehearsed. And yet, I had also seen the documents. I had also seen Alaska. I had also almost died there. Both things were true, and that was the part that made it unbearable. Around 2 a.m., there was a knock on my door. Not urgent, not aggressive, careful. Melanie Luke's voice. I opened it slightly. He stood there holding 2 cups of coffee. Couldn't sleep either, he said quietly. I let him in. We sat in silence for a while, the kind that only exists between people who have seen the same kind of danger but still don't fully understand it. Finally, I spoke. I keep thinking about her voice, I said. Luke nodded slowly. So do I. I looked at him. What do you think? She is Luke victim or participant? He didn't answer immediately. That hesitation told me everything. Both, he said finally. I closed my eyes briefly. That's what scares me most, I whispered. Because monsters are easy to understand. But people who are both hurt and harmful, those are harder. Those are unpredictable. The next morning, Hannah Brooks arrived earlier than expected. Her expression was different this time. Not just serious, focused in a way that made my stomach tighten. We've traced the advisory structure further, she said immediately. Luke straightened, and Hannah placed a thick file on the table. Our Caldwell Advisory is not a single consultant, she said. It's a financial shell network. Multiple entities. Multiple operators. My chest tightened. So Vanessa wasn't talking to one person, I said slowly. No, Hannah confirmed. She was interacting with a system. A system. That word again. Everything was becoming systems. Not choices. Not emotions. Systems. Hannah continued. And Derek Collins is more deeply involved than we initially thought. Luke frowned. In what way? Hannah turned a page. He has prior financial misconduct investigations under sealed settlements. My stomach dropped. What kind of misconduct? I asked. Hannah hesitated slightly. Asset manipulation, insurance structuring abuse, identity authorization overlap. I felt a cold wave move through my body. So he's done this before, I whispered. Hannah didn't deny it. Luke leaned forward, and Vanessa Hannah looked at me carefully before answering. She appears to have been introduced to the advisory system through Derek. My hands clenched. Used, I said quietly. Hannah nodded. Potentially. Silence filled the room again. Then Hannah added something that made everything shift. There's something else. She slid another document forward. It was a timeline. But not mine. Vanessa's. I stared at it. What is this? Hannah answered quietly. Her financial exposure began 18 months ago. I frowned, so Luke's voice tightened slightly. So that's before Miguel's death anniversary estate review cycle. I looked up sharply. What does that mean? Hannah spoke carefully. It means she was targeted during a predictable financial vulnerability window. My stomach tightened. Targeted, I repeated. Yes, Hannah said, and gradually integrated into advisory dependency. I shook my head slowly. No, I whispered. She's my daughter, not a target. Luke stepped closer. Melanie, he said gently, that's exactly why this works. I looked at him. Because of family, he nodded. Because trust is the easiest access point. My breath caught. I hated that sentence, because I understood it instantly. Hannah continued. We're preparing a formal indictment against Derek Collins and the advisory network. My chest tightened. And Vanessa silence. Then Hannah said quietly, she's still legally entangled in the structure. My voice dropped. So she could be charged. Hannah didn't answer immediately. Then, yes. The room felt like it tilted again. That was the moment I realized something I hadn't fully allowed myself to face yet. Justice would not arrive cleanly. It never does. That afternoon, I was allowed supervised communication again. Vanessa was brought into the same secured facility, but not the same room. We spoke through a monitored video link this time. When her face appeared on the screen, she looked even more exhausted than before. Mom, she said immediately. I studied her. She looked like someone standing on unstable ground. I need to ask you something, I said quietly. She nodded quickly. Anything. I hesitated. Did you ever want me dead? Her face collapsed instantly. No, she said immediately. No, Mom, never. I watched her carefully, looking for hesitation, for avoidance, for anything that would confirm what I feared. But there was nothing like that. Only panic. Only fear. I didn't understand what Derek was doing, she continued quickly. He made it sound like paperwork, like restructuring. I swear to you, I didn't know about Alaska the way it happened. My throat tightened. But you signed things, I said softly. She nodded, crying now. Yes, but I didn't read them properly. I trusted him. Silence. Then she added something quieter. I trusted him more than I should have. That sentence landed heavily, because it was the first fully honest thing I had heard from her. Still, honesty does not erase consequences. I leaned forward slightly. Vanessa, I said gently, do you understand that I almost died? She closed her eyes. Yes, she whispered. And do you understand? I continued that whether you meant it or not, your decisions put me there. Her voice broke. Yes. The room went quiet. Behind the glass, Hannah watched carefully. Luke stood still behind her. Then Vanessa said something that changed the tone completely. Mom, I think Derek is still trying to control what happens next. My stomach tightened. What do you mean? She looked up. He said there are ways to correct outcomes if things go wrong. A chill ran through me. What kind of correction? I asked. She shook her head quickly. I don't know, but he told me not to talk to you anymore. My blood ran cold. He told you that, I whispered. Yes. Silence filled the space between us. Then I said something I didn't expect myself to say. Vanessa, are you safe? Her eyes filled again. I don't know, she whispered. And in that moment, for the first time since Alaska, I wasn't thinking about what she did to me. I was thinking about what she might still be trapped inside. because the system wasn't finished. Not yet. After Vanessa said, "I don't know if I'm safe," the room went completely still. Even the hum of the recording equipment seemed to fade into the background. Hannah Brooks didn't interrupt. Luke Mercer didn't move. And I didn't breathe properly for several seconds, because for the first time the situation stopped being a question of what Vanessa had done to me and became a question of what was still happening to her. I leaned forward slightly toward the screen. "Vanessa," I said quietly, "listen to me carefully." Her eyes stayed locked on mine. "Where is Derek right now?" She hesitated. "At our apartment in Portland. Is he with you?" "No," she said quickly. "He left 2 days ago for meetings. He said everything was being handled externally now." Hannah immediately stepped closer to the monitor. "Externally by who?" she asked sharply. Vanessa shook her head. "I don't know. He just said the advisory group would take over communication." Luke exchanged a glance with Hannah. That name again. R. Caldwell Advisory. A system that never showed its face, only its influence. I felt something cold settle in my chest. "Vanessa," I said softly, "when you signed those documents, did anyone explain what they meant in detail?" She frowned, trying to remember. "They said it was standard restructuring, estate optimization, tax protection." Her voice cracked slightly. "I thought I was helping you, Mom. I thought I was protecting your assets after Dad died. You were so overwhelmed. I just wanted to make things easier." My throat tightened painfully, because that part was true. I had been overwhelmed. I had trusted her to help me, and that trust had been redirected into something else entirely. Hannah spoke again, her tone controlled. "Vanessa, did Derek ever mention insurance acceleration clauses or travel liability conditions?" Vanessa looked confused. "No, never." Luke stepped forward slightly. "Did anyone ever instruct you to isolate your mother physically?" Her eyes widened instantly. "No," she said firmly. "I swear. The trip was supposed to be a wellness retreat. I even chose the location with him. The Alaska cabin wasn't supposed to be—" She stopped suddenly. Her breathing changed. I watched her carefully. "Wasn't supposed to be what I asked." Her voice dropped. Remote. Silence. That one word carried more weight than anything else in the room. Remote. I closed my eyes briefly. So there it was. A shift. A deviation. A change after approval. Hannah immediately straightened. "That aligns with what we've been seeing," she said quietly. Luke frowned. What? Hannah turned slightly. "Routing manipulation after initial consent." My stomach tightened. "You mean someone changed the destination after Vanessa agreed to it?" I asked. Hannah nodded. "Yes." Vanessa shook her head rapidly. "No, that doesn't make sense. Derek handled the logistics." Luke looked at her directly. "Where did Derek get the advisory contact?" She hesitated. "From a financial seminar network. Private investor group." Hannah wrote something down immediately. "High-risk referral structure," she muttered. I felt my chest tighten again. This wasn't just fraud. It was layering. One person trusting another. That trust passing through systems until it became something unrecognizable. And I was the endpoint. Vanessa suddenly leaned closer to the camera. "Mom," she said urgently, "I didn't want anything to happen to you, I swear." I studied her face. There was desperation there, but also something else. Confusion. Like she was still trying to assemble a puzzle she never saw the full picture of. I spoke carefully. "I believe you didn't intend it," I said slowly. Her shoulders dropped slightly in relief. "But intent and outcome are not the same thing," I continued. Her eyes filled again. "I know," she whispered. The room was quiet for a moment. Then Hannah said something that shifted everything again. "Vanessa," she said carefully, "we believe Derek may be attempting to activate financial finalization protocols." Vanessa frowned. "What does that mean?" Luke answered quietly. "It means he's trying to close the system." Her face went pale. Close it how Hannah didn't sugarcoat it, by finalizing legal presumption of death. Silence. Vanessa looked at me instantly. "No," she said quickly. "No, Mom? You're alive." "They can't do that." My chest tightened. "They can try," I said softly. Her voice cracked. "Why would he do that?" Hannah answered. "To release financial holdings." Vanessa shook her head in disbelief. "That's insane." Luke's voice was calm but firm. "It's structured incentive fraud." She looked lost now. "I don't understand." I watched her carefully, and something inside me shifted, because I realized she wasn't lying. Not anymore. She was trapped in partial knowledge. A system she had touched but never fully seen. A machine she helped activate but never understood. I spoke softly. "Vanessa, did Derek ever threaten you?" Her silence was immediate. Long, heavy. Then she whispered, not directly. Hannah stepped forward instantly. "What does that mean?" Vanessa swallowed hard. "He said if I ever spoke to you about the details, I could become legally exposed." My stomach dropped. Exposed how I asked. She looked at me helplessly. "I don't know." He said, "Liability extension." Luke exhaled slowly. "That's pressure conditioning," he muttered. Hannah nodded once. "Control through legal fear." I leaned back slightly. So there it was. Not just manipulation of me, but manipulation of her too. A chain. A system that bound both of us in different ways. Vanessa suddenly spoke again, voice shaking. "Mom, I'm scared." The simplicity of it hit me harder than anything else. Because fear was the first honest thing I fully believed from her. I softened slightly. "I know," I said quietly. Her eyes filled again. "I didn't want this," she repeated. "I know," I said again. But this time I added something else. "But you still have to face what it caused." Silence. She nodded slowly. "I understand." Hannah stepped back slightly, speaking to Luke in a low voice. But I kept my eyes on Vanessa. Because something inside me was changing again. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But clarity. For the first time, I saw her not as a villain, but as someone standing inside a collapsing structure she didn't build. And that changed the shape of everything. The call ended minutes later. When the screen went dark, I didn't move. Neither did anyone else. Then Hannah finally spoke. "This is bigger than a family case," she said quietly. Luke nodded. "Yes." I looked down at my hands, and for the first time I understood the most painful truth of all. I had been sent to Alaska to disappear, but Vanessa had been sent into something she could not control. And somewhere inside that system, someone was still deciding how this ended. After the call ended, no one spoke for a long time. The silence in the room wasn't peaceful. It was loaded like something unfinished had been left hanging in the air between us. Vanessa's last words kept repeating in my mind. I didn't want this. And for the first time since Alaska, I wasn't thinking about revenge. I was thinking about consequences that didn't belong to just one person. Hannah Brooks finally broke the silence. "We have enough now," she said quietly. Luke Mercer looked at her. "Enough for what?" "For a full federal escalation," she replied. "We can move against Derek Collins and the advisory structure." My chest tightened slightly. "And Vanessa?" I asked. Hannah hesitated. "That depends on cooperation." That word again. Cooperation. As if lives could be negotiated like contracts. Luke stepped closer. "She's still a liability in their system," he said. "If they think she can talk," he didn't finish the sentence. But he didn't need to. I already understood. In systems like this, people were not just victims or perpetrators. They were assets, or risks, or problems to be removed. I pressed my hands together slowly. "I want her protected," I said firmly. Hannah looked at me. Even after everything, I didn't answer immediately, because the honest answer wasn't simple. But I still said it. Yes. Silence followed. Luke nodded slightly as if he had expected that answer. Hannah exhaled. "Then we move carefully," she said. "No direct confrontation until we secure legal jurisdiction over the advisory network." I didn't fully understand the legal language, but I understood something else. This was far from over. That night I was moved again. Not back to Alaska, not back to Oregon. Somewhere quieter, safer. A protected residence outside a small federal coordination base. The room was simple. Neutral colors. No personal objects. No windows that opened. But this time I wasn't afraid of the space. I was afraid of what existed outside it. Luke stayed nearby during the transfer. Before leaving, he looked at me. "You're not alone in this anymore," he said quietly. I almost laughed, because I had never been more surrounded in my life. And yet somehow, I had never felt more isolated from truth. After he left, I sat alone on the edge of the bed. Miguel's memory felt far away now. Not gone, but distant. Like a life I had lived before everything fractured. I thought about Vanessa again. Not the version of her in Alaska. Not the version on the screen. But the child who once told me she would take care of me forever, and I realized something painful. She probably still believed that, in her own way. But belief doesn't always match action, and love doesn't always survive systems designed to exploit it. 3 days later, Hannah returned. Her expression was different again, not tense this time. Focused. "We've traced the full advisory network," she said immediately. I straightened slightly. "And it's collapsing," she replied. My heart skipped. Collapsing how Luke, standing behind her, answered. "Federal seizure, financial freezes, legal exposure across multiple shell entities." I let out a slow breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. "And Derek?" I asked. Hannah didn't hesitate. "In custody." The words should have brought relief, but instead they brought something heavier. Finality. "And Vanessa?" I asked quietly. Hannah's expression softened slightly. "She's being placed under protective legal review." My stomach tightened. "Protective," I repeated. Hannah nodded. "She's cooperating." I closed my eyes briefly. That word again. Cooperation. This time it sounded different. Not forced, not strategic. Real. Luke stepped forward slightly. "She gave testimony," he said quietly, "about how she was introduced into the advisory structure." My chest tightened, and Hannah looked at me directly. "She confirmed she never intended harm toward you." Silence filled the room. I looked down at my hands. I know I said softly, because I did. Now I did. But knowing that didn't erase what happened. It just changed how I carried it. Hannah sat down across from me. "There's something else," she said gently. I looked up. "The insurance claims tied to your name have been fully frozen," she continued. "No financial benefit can be accessed by any party until investigation is complete." I nodded slowly. "And the Alaska cabin?" I asked. Luke answered. "Closed. Seized as part of evidence." A strange quiet settled over me. That place. That frozen isolation. That place where I almost disappeared. Now it was just evidence. A location on a file. Not a destiny. Hannah leaned forward slightly. "You're not required to testify further unless you choose to," she said. I thought about that. Testify. Tell the story again. Turn pain into record. Turn survival into documentation. I looked at her. "I don't want revenge," I said quietly. Hannah nodded. "I didn't think you did," I continued. "I just want it to stop happening to other people." Luke looked at me for a moment. Then he said softly, "That's how it stops." Silence followed. For the first time, it didn't feel heavy. It felt settled. Later that evening, I was allowed a monitored video call again. Vanessa appeared on screen. But this time, she didn't look like she was holding herself together with effort. She just looked tired. Human. "Mom," she said softly. I nodded. "Are you okay?" I asked. She gave a small, sad smile. "I'm processing," she said. I almost smiled at that, because it was honest in a way neither of us had been allowed to be for a long time. "I didn't know where this would end," she said quietly. "I know," I replied. Silence. Then she added, "I'm sorry." I believed her. Not because everything was fixed, but because she finally had nothing left to gain from lying. I looked at her carefully. "I forgive what I can understand," I said slowly. Her eyes filled slightly. "And what you can't?" she asked. I paused. "I live with it," I said. "Not as punishment, not as forgiveness, just as truth." A long silence followed. Then she nodded. "I understand," she whispered. When the call ended, I didn't cry. I didn't collapse. I didn't feel the dramatic release I once expected healing to be. Instead, I felt something quieter. Acceptance. Not of what happened, but of what survived it. Weeks later, I was allowed to leave the facility under supervision. Not back to Alaska. Not back to Portland immediately, but to a place of transition. A small house near the coast. Quiet, open, real. Luke visited once before I settled fully. He stood by the doorway as I unpacked a small box of personal things. "You did something important," he said. I looked at him. "What's that?" "You didn't let the system finish what it started." I smiled faintly. "I didn't do it alone." He nodded. "That matters too." After he left, I stood by the window for a long time. The ocean outside moved slowly, indifferently, like time itself didn't care what had happened before. I thought about Alaska one last time. The cabin, the footprints, the silence. And I realized something I didn't expect. It no longer felt like a place where I almost died. It felt like a place I escaped from. And there was a difference, a very important one. Because survival is not just about living through something. It's about refusing to disappear inside it. That night I wrote one sentence in a small notebook I kept beside the window. "They tried to erase me, but I am still here." And for the first time in a very long time, that was enough. When I look back on everything that happened from the quiet days in my home in Portland to the freezing isolation of that cabin in Alaska, I understand something I never understood before. Betrayal is not always loud. Sometimes it arrives softly wrapped in concern disguised as love, and spoken through the voices of people you would die for. I used to believe that being a good mother meant trusting your child unconditionally, that love alone could protect you from harm. But life taught me a harder truth. Love without boundaries can blind you. Trust without awareness can be used against you. And family, no matter how close, can still become part of a system you never agreed to enter. But I also learned something else. Something I never want to forget. Even when you are pushed into the darkest places, even when everything is designed for you to disappear quietly, you still have a choice. You can still question. You can still resist. And sometimes, survival itself becomes an act of courage so powerful that it rewrites everything they thought they knew about you. I didn't escape Alaska because I was stronger than fear. I escaped because I finally stopped doubting what I felt. That small voice inside me, the one I ignored too many times, wasn't paranoia. It was protection. And listening to it saved my life. Forgiveness didn't come easily, and it didn't come completely. But healing didn't require me to erase the past. It only required me to stop living inside it. Today, I don't see myself as a victim. I see myself as someone who survived a story that tried very hard to end differently. And maybe that is the most important lesson of all, no matter how far you are pushed, no matter how isolated or unheard you feel, your life is still yours to reclaim. If this story touched you in any way, I would really love to hear your thoughts. What part stayed with you the most? Share your feelings in the comments. I read them all. And if you believe in stories of truth survival and emotional healing, please don't forget to subscribe. Your support means more than you know, and it helps me continue sharing stories that remind us we are never truly alone.